Morning everyone, this is Andrew Rupe, agronomist with Golden Harvest, covering the state of Wisconsin. We're here in a cornfield today that's rapidly approaching black layer, so we're getting very close to harvest. This field's actually right around a quarter milk line, so in about a week or two we could actually see some combines starting to make their way into a field like this. One thing to be checking whenever we're starting to think about what our harvest schedule will look like is the stalk integrity of the plant. So we need to check what fields are susceptible to some stalk lodging losses and bump those fields up on the harvest priority schedule. So a couple different things that can affect the stalk integrity of the plant. Number one is probably disease. So there's a couple different diseases that we may see in our geography. One of those is anthracnose. Those are ones where at the stalk, after we peel off one of the leaf sheaths, we'll see some blackened lesions on the stalk itself. And what's happening in there is the interior pith of the stalk is actually being eaten away. Some other ones would be gibberella. That one you can see some pinkish discoloration if you actually split open the stalk, and there's some pinkness in the pith there. Some other ones that we could run into would be physoderma node rot. That one will attack right at the nodes of the plant, and we see that commonly in some heavy corn on corn situations where we've had excessive moisture earlier in the season. That disease usually starts to set in prior to tassel, so in those early vegetative stages. And then another disease that we could see is Fusarium crown rot, where we're actually seeing a weakened stalk right at the crown of the roots, and it'll start to break right at that lower portion of the stalk. All those different diseases can lead to stalk lodging and harvest losses. So an important thing to do to check for disease is to do a pinch test. So what we'll do is we'll actually go along the lower portion, maybe that second node of the plant, and actually pinch and try to crush the stalks and see what the susceptibility of the stalk is at that level. So we go through and we're squeezing as hard as we can on about that second node from the ground. If it collapses, we know we've got a deteriorated pith within that plant, and it's probably due to some type of disease that is eaten away at the inside of that. So doing that is a good check. Doing that pinch test is a good check for disease. Another thing we can do for disease or abiotic stress is a push test on the plant. So we'll go through, we'll push right about the ear level. We'll try to push the top of the plant over to the next row and see how many plants will snap over, either break or just bend, and see what the percentage of that actually is. We push over. We've got a few that are snapping in here. Finding that percentage of plants that are susceptible is important to, like I said earlier, checking out what the harvest schedule should look like as we move closer to harvest. Some other things that can affect the susceptibility of the stalks would be the hybrid's genetics. So Golden Harvest, we rate our hybrids based upon the susceptibility of those stalks to late season breakage and losses. So important to remember that whenever you're looking at a field and what the hybrid's genetics are. And one of the big things too is the abiotic stresses we are starting to experience in the state of Wisconsin and across the Corn Belt. We're running into some pretty hot and dry conditions across much of the state. And what can happen is that plant, since those roots can't take up a whole lot of water and nutrients, they'll actually start to pull water and nutrients from the stalk of the plant and start to feed that ear from the stalk. So we had really good pollination conditions. We had excellent kernel sets. So that stalk and that plant is really going to try to feed a lot of kernels, which makes those stalks even more susceptible when we have high yield potential and when we start to run dry later in the season. So getting out, doing push tests, doing pinch tests is important to evaluate what what our susceptibility for stalk lodging losses might be as we get closer and closer to harvest. With that, this is Andrew Rupe, signing off.